The central theme of the Toldot chapter is this classic struggle and battle between the twin brothers, Jacob and Esav. The story begins, Eila Toldot, these are the children, Toldot means children of, offspring of Isaac and Rebekah. And the story continues that Rebekah was pregnant, but her pregnancy was very difficult. She was in pain. So she went to ask, why is she in pain? And she's told, you're in pain because you have two children inside of you. These two children are not simple children. They represent two nations. And these two nations will always be at odds with each other. And their struggle begins in your womb. But it will continue through their lifetimes and throughout history. And this is the twin brothers Esav and Jacob, Jacob and Esav. So this chapter is not only a profound psychological chapter, as I'll explain, but it also has historical implications, because Jacob would become the ancestor of the Jewish people. Esav would become the ancestor of Rome, Western world, and Christianity. So exactly what was told to Rebekah thousands of years ago, that these two nations would struggle with each other, is what happened. The battle between Christians and Jews, the battles that still impact us today in one way or another. But of course the good news is at the end they will make their peace, which is the end of the story. But let's go back to the actual struggle between the two. So it says that Esav was the warrior and Jacob was the scholar. And then the controversial story continues that Esav one day comes back weary from the field, is hungry. So Jacob says, if you want food, sell me your birthright. So Esav, in his passionate moment of hunger, sold his birthright. But it gets worse. Then Jacob conspires with his mother to so-called steal the blessings from Esav. Jacob dresses up in the garments of Esav, goes to his father Isaac, who at that point was blind, feels his arms, and he sees that feels like Esav. He actually says, you have the hands of Esav, but your voice is the voice of Jacob. And Jacob, in effect, steals the blessings from Esav. When Esav comes back from the field, and he hears that Jacob had already been blessed, his father, assuming that it was Esav, Esav lets out a great cry. And then Isaac gives him a blessing, but he cannot give him the blessing he had already given to Jacob. Esav is outraged, and he goes on a lifetime pursuit to kill his brother Jacob. Jacob, the chapter concludes that Jacob escapes and goes off not to meet his brother for 20 years. So this story is fraught with complications. This is the behavior of a scholar, of a wholesome person, stealing blessings from his brother. I mean, what kind of impression does that leave us? So there's an unbelievably powerful lesson, and which can be understood with an analogy that the Baal Shem Tov gives. And here's the analogy. The analogy is of a king, an ailing king, a leader of a great kingdom, who was dying and knew his time was about to come. But he had a son who would become the heir to the throne. But the father was a very wise leader. And he said to himself, listen, my son has not yet earned his way to be a leader. He needs to go out and not live under the protection of the palace. Go live among the subjects. And there, when he sees the people's needs, the people's challenges, he'll become a sensitive leader. Or as long as he's in the palace, he's being catered to, he's protected, he has ministers and all kinds of attendants serving him all the time. So the father, even though it was painful, tells his son, I have to send you to a distant land in the kingdom where no one will know who you are. And you have to make it on your own. And one day you'll be worthy to be the leader of this kingdom. So the son goes off. The father, of course, cries over the fact. But he also anticipates and knows that the son, after a while, is going to forget where he came from. So several times a year, he sends him a letter reminding him, remember, my son, you are my son, the son of the king. You were sent to this place for a reason, in order for you to earn your way. And one day you will return to the palace, and you will lead this great land. When the son receives the letter, he wants to celebrate. He wants to dance. But what is he going to do? What is he going to tell the neighbors, the townspeople? They'll be resentful if he starts telling them, I'm the king's son. They'll even think he's insane. So he has a great idea. He announces free cocktails, free drinks on me, Today is a party day. So of course everyone's celebrating because they got free drinks. Meanwhile, he celebrates because he received a letter from his father. So the Baal Shem Tov explains this is the reason when you talk about Jews, you always hear about holidays. The first thing people say about holidays, food. On Hanukkah you eat latkes, on Shavuos blintzes, on Passover, the Passover foods, kreplach, kishke, kugel, chont. We got a food for every occasion. The question is, what's so spiritual about food? So the Baal Shem Tov's analogy goes like this. The king is God, and each child of the king is the soul that each of us has. As long as the soul is up in heaven, it's living in the comfort of the palace. There's no big achievement. There are no challenges. God says, I want you to go down to earth. Live in a physical body. Live in a material world. There you'll be challenged. And that's where I want you to excel. Prove yourself. However, as we come down to this earth, we forget that there's a soul. And we forget that God sent us. We get carried off and carried away with our own agendas. So God sends us several times a year a holiday, a special day, and says, listen, this is a reminder that I exist. Celebrate that you are my children. But the problem is the body is not interested in spiritual messages. So God says, so give the body free drinks. Give it some food to eat. Let it sleep a little late. Let it socialize. Let it do a few things that satisfy its needs. And meanwhile, while the body is celebrating for eating all this good food and saying a little l'chaim and a drink here and there, the soul can celebrate for the main reason that the holiday was given. This analogy explains what happened with Jacob and Esav. Jacob represents the soul. Esav represents the body, the warrior. For the soul to function in this world, it has to sometimes dress up in the garments of the body, because the body won't cooperate if it doesn't dress up. So the soul has to explain to the human body, listen, there's something in it for you. You're going to get free drinks. On Shabbos, there's special good foods. Holidays have other good foods. There's a lot of partying going on. So the body says, oh great, I'm in for the party. And meanwhile, Jacob, the soul, can celebrate for the main reason that it has to celebrate. So the lesson of Jacob and Esav can only be really understood that it's not deception. It's about speaking on the terms of the material world. Jacob is basically speaking to Esav on his terms and saying, just like you would tell a child, listen, if you study well in school, we'll give you a candy. We all know that candy is not the main thing, but the child doesn't understand yet that knowledge is valuable. The child understands that candy is valuable. So it's not deceiving the child, it's just speaking on the terms of the child and saying, look, right, at this point you understand that candy is valuable. One day you'll understand the value of knowledge, and you'll understand that the candy's value pales in comparison to the value of knowledge. So Jacob, the soul, has to educate the body on its terms, how to appreciate the divine, the spirit, the Torah, and the higher purpose and values. This is one key lesson from this week's Torah chapter.